And those were the comments there that were made by President Biden just yesterday. Good morning, everyone. My name is Josh Breslow, and I want to get to the latest here as Israel is officially at war. This is now day 5, and the fighting does continue. The death toll we just learned now stands at more than 2,100 on both sides and is only expected to rise. You are taking a live look over Gaza right now, where you can see more of that rocket fire there in the distance. Things do remain fairly calm for just a few seconds, a few minutes there, and then you see more of those launches and a lot of smoke and sometimes fire as, again, Israel is at war. This all began over the weekend with that surprise attack by Hamas on Israel. President Biden saying at least 14 Americans have been confirmed dead, and again, the death toll more than 2,100 on both sides. I do want to talk more about all of this here, so let's bring in Professor Jonathan Reinhold, chair of the Department of Political Studies over at Bar Ilan University in Israel. He joins us now live to discuss all of this and dig it a little deeper here. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
My pleasure.
So first off, the question that we seem to get more often than not is, how did we get to this point? How did this start? And can you help kind of break that down for us?
Sure. So Israel withdrew from Gaza, all its troops, all its army, all the settlers in 2005. And it handed the area over to the Palestinian Authority, which cooperates with Israel on security and receives aid from the United States and negotiates with Israel. In 2007, Hamas overthrew the Palestinian Authority. And since then, Israel and Hamas have fought a number of wars in 2008, 12, 14, and 2021. And each time, Hamas is trying to attack Israel through the use of rockets to attack Israeli civilians, and Israel is trying and succeeding to degrade Hamas's military capabilities. Now, what's been going on is that that's the stick, and Israel's also had a carrot to try and discourage Hamas from attacking it, which is that Israel allows in a certain number of Palestinian workers from Gaza to work in Israel and allows money from Qatar to go to Hamas. The idea being that Hamas wants to remain in power, and that if it was to attack Israel, it could lose these things, and that would threaten its hold on power. However, what we have seen since Saturday is that that strategy has failed. Hamas is driven primarily by an ideological, religious desire, aim to destroy the state of Israel. And for reasons of regional politics now, because Israel and Saudi Arabia are getting closer together and in the process of normalizing their relations, Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah want to prevent that happening. And they are hoping that what is going on now, the war between Israel and Hamas, will prevent that normalization.
I don't know if there's any easy way to define this, but I would say the question that we get most, aside from how all of this began, is who is Hamas? Can you break some of that down for us as well?
Sure. Hamas is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood that seeks to bring politics in the Middle East under Islamic law, under Sharia. It's the Palestinian version. It's an extreme Islamist terrorist organization. Its ideology is openly anti-Semitic, not just anti-Israel, and it is dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel in any borders.
We know there's violence that takes place in the Middle East. We have covered that for years, for decades here, but overall, this is, I guess, significantly different, correct?
Yes. This is the largest single terrorist attack in the history of the State of Israel since 1948. And it is the most deadly 24 hours in the history of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. 1,200 people dead, 2,400 injured, 150 kidnapped, whole families, babies, children, senior citizens murdered in their homes. If we were to try and understand this in American terms, to scale it up, then it would be the equivalent of 35,000 civilians being killed, being murdered in an area smaller than Manhattan. That's the equivalent of 10 9/11s in one day. And it's not the Twin Towers that is being attacked. It's American civilians in their homes with rockets raining down. So that is why this is such a big deal.
I know a question on a lot of people's minds is how something like this could happen. Is it an intelligence failure? What led to this with nobody knowing that it was going to happen? An unprecedented attack, a surprise attack. I imagine that's going to be investigated at some point so everyone can figure out how something like this could happen to prevent it from happening again, right?
Absolutely. Israel, at the end of any war, which there has been a major mistake, error, there is always a state investigation, which means it's not carried out by the government and it's not carried out by the military, but by a judge, and therefore it's independent. So we will see that once this war has ended. If we're trying to understand the mistakes, there are mistakes on three levels. First of all, operationally, Israel didn't know about the timing of this attack. It knew what sort of thing Hamas wanted to do because it follows the training, but it didn't have any information that it was going to happen now. The second mistake is conceptual, and we spoke about it. Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, believed that opening the border for workers from Gaza and cash from Qatar would deter Hamas from launching this. And the third error is political, and that's that the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, refused to be briefed by the defense establishment, who said that the domestic debate, argument, struggle over the legal reforms that his government wants to put forward was leading Israel's enemies to perceive it as divided and was leading to a palpable, clear and present danger. So those are the mistakes, but a far more detailed report will come once it's investigated.
Based on your studies and what you know about the situation there, do you think the, kind of diplomatic relationship that's been forming between Saudi Arabia and Israel played any sort of role in this attack and the timing of it?
I think that it's central. I think that if you are Hamas, you are supposed to represent Islam. You're an Islamist organization. And you don't like the idea that the leading Muslim country, Saudi Arabia, is going to legitimize peace with Israel. And if you're Iran, you are worried as a country that is Persian, not Arab, as a country which is Shia Muslim, not Sunni Muslim. You are worried that if Israel and the Arab world and the most important Arab states are all at peace, then you, as Iran, will not be able to make much headway and gain much support in the region. So I think that Hamas and Iran share an agenda that relates to the timing of this attack, which is to prevent peace and normalization between Israel and the Arab world.
As we mentioned, we are now in day 5 of this war following that surprise attack, the unprecedented attack by Hamas. Do you think, again, based on your studies here, that the violence is only going to escalate? Because we know the death toll now stands at more than 2,100 on both sides, and that number is anticipated to rise. So is the violence likely to escalate from here?
Yes, almost certainly. And the reason is this, that Israel must reestablish deterrence. In a region like Israel's, if you don't show that you're willing to fight and take on the enemy, then you will face more violence and you will face more terrorism. Israel's goal will now be to go into Gaza and to create such a situation as at the end of this conflict, whoever heads Gaza will have to say to Gaza's population, had we known what would happen when we attacked Israel, we would not have done it. That is how we will know that deterrence has worked. That is what the head of the terrorist organization in Lebanon that attacked Israel in 2006, Nasrallah, that is what he said at the end of the conflict. And Israel's objective will be to hear something similar from Hamas leaders or whoever is left in Gaza.
We've already seen quite a bit of involvement on the part of the U.S. We heard from President Biden a couple times now where he has condemned Hamas and said that we do stand with Israel 100%. How involved do you expect that the U.S. is going to get in all of this?
Well, I think there are three things that the U.S. will definitely do. One it might do, and one it definitely won't do. What it definitely won't do is put American troops on the ground in Israel or in Lebanon. You can forget that. What it definitely will do, and is already doing, is to contribute to Israeli deterrence by threatening Iran and Hezbollah with American naval and air power if they get involved. And that will also involve diplomatic cover at the United Nations and elsewhere for Israel's military operation, which, as I said, I think will be greater, and to deter Hezbollah from Lebanon from joining the conflict. If Hezbollah nonetheless joins the conflict and Israel faces a two-front war, one can expect the United States to resupply Israel with weapons and possibly use its air and naval power to attack Islamic pro-Iranian forces that will join in against Israel, be they in Lebanon, Syria, or Iraq.
All right, Professor Jonathan Reinhold, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. Is there anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
I think I've said enough. So I think that perhaps the most important thing I can add is that this is a war between Israel and Hamas. It is not a war between Israel and the Palestinians. The victims of this, in the first instance, are Israeli civilians, but in the second instance, it's also the Palestinian civilians in Gaza.
All right, Professor, thank you again for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Josh.
All right, taking a live look here once again over Gaza. We do have this image that's been coming in where you can see the smoke there in the background as this is now day 5 and the fighting does continue. The death toll once again now standing at more than 2,100 on both sides, only expected to rise from here. Around 1,100 people have been killed in Israel and about 1,000 in Gaza. That is according to local media reports. Let's head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, the first one of the hour, and on the other side, we're going to get right back into our coverage of Israel at war. You're watching Live Now from Fox.